Welcome to this life-changing experience. We move a way of no return from 7 wonders of the world to the summit of Kilimanjaro. From the statue of Nelson Mandela to the African Renaissance Monument. We break all the boundaries. From the greatest archives of Timbuktu to the deepest oceans and rivers of Africa, we reveal the mysteries. We asking life's biggest questions. We rule the world of esoteric knowledge, from ancient Egypt to fourth industrial revolution. Ladies and gentlemen, Masterclass Africa, Sir Max, the Knowledge Premier.
Contrary to the falsification of history by the Eurocentric institutions of learning and religiosity, the African natives possessed their own indigenous calendar, which they used as a tool for organizing time with respect to rituals and ceremonies, agricultural events and the seasons, and the knowledge of the cosmos. Quoting Zulu, Matabo Zulu. And I believe that this introduction becomes very important, particularly at the time that we find ourselves in as an African continent. It is September according to the Gregorian calendar, and according to the African calendar, September is the first month of it's the first month of the year. You know, a calendar that spans 13 months. And throughout the African continent, based on the African calendar, it's actually a new year. And there are a few countries across the continent that are still using the African calendar. Ethiopia is one country that is still using the African calendar, and Eritrea. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, it suffices then to say Happy New Year to the Africans. And today, that's what we'll be talking about today. Most importantly, we will be looking at September being the African New Year, understanding an African calendar and how is it structured. The cycle of time according to the Africans, it's what we will be looking at. And we know there are pockets of communities throughout the continent that still supports the idea of an African calendar. And I normally say, whoever who's in doubt of an African calendar and how it goes about, look at nature. September is when, particularly for us in the southern hemisphere, where even the trees, nature, where it's a time for rebirth, it's a time of new birth. So it definitely makes sense. We'll also be looking at the significance of an African calendar in the modern economic system. Is there a way that we can link this calendar with the economic system? There are many economic activities that are timed, that are aligned to the cycle of time, so we'll be able to see or to explore the significance and the relevance thereon. Also, the alignment of the calendar with the African indigenous knowledge system, the healing system that have always been aligned with the calendar, as well as food security, and then the African consciousness of time and its expression in a Gregorian calendar, to say, okay, we are in a Gregorian calendar, but can you maintain the consciousness while in the Gregorian calendar? So this is what we will be talking about today, ladies and gentlemen. We're sending our love and light throughout the African continent. You are listening to Masterclass Africa. I am Sir Max, a knowledgepreneur, and this is Channel Africa, bringing you an African perspective. We are on DSTV 802 and on www.channelafrica.co.za. So encouraging you to be part of the conversation. We are interactive on all our social media platforms, on Twitter at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook Facebook, Channel Africa 1, YouTube and Instagram, it is Channel Africa Radio. We're going for a quick break, but on the other side of the break, we're hoping to come back with the CEO of the Zinzi Mandela Foundation, Mkhulu Nsingiza, whom we're hoping to be joining us in this important conversation. Don't go away, stick around because we're coming back with more.
Change your game, empowering the next generation of outstanding African entrepreneurs.
On Change Your Game this week, Jovita upcycles creativity and community in new collaboration. Jovita, taking its name from a mix of Italian and Latin, is an international cycling kit company headquartered in Cape Town, South Africa. We speak to CEO Andrew Gold about their newly launched limited edition high-performance designer gear and how it responds innovatively to societal challenges. That's here on Channel Africa with me, Asanda Beta, Friday 9 a.m. Central African Time on DSTV 802, PAS 10 satellite and www.channelafrica.co.za from an African perspective.
This is Africa's best sport destination, Africa at Play, where there are stars, legends, and the principles of the game. Kenyan athlete Eliud Kipchoge is here, the first man in the history to complete a marathon under 2 hours. South African golden girl, Caster Semenya, Sadio Mane, one of Africa's best footballers, CAF President Dr. Patrice Motsepe, Dr. Tiangwa, COSAFA President is also present. Reigning World Rugby Champs, Springboks, plus the tall height around us, that's African basketballers, Cecilia Molokwani, African Netball President, volleyball, cricket, golf, tennis, boxing, and swimming, all represented.
You are listening to Africa at Play with sports from an African perspective. Live every Saturday and Sunday from 1900 hours to 2000 hours Central African Time on DSTV Audio Bouquet, Channel 802, or streamed live on channelafrica.co.za. Africa at Play.
Change your game, empowering the next generation of outstanding African entrepreneurs.
On Change Your Game this week, Jovita upcycles creativity and community in new collaboration. Jovita, taking its name from a mix of Italian and Latin, is an international cycling kit company headquartered in Cape Town, South Africa. We speak to CEO Andrew Gold about their newly launched limited edition high-performance designer gear and how it responds innovatively to societal challenges. That's here on Channel Africa with me, Asanda Beta, Friday 9 a.m. Central African Time on DSTV 802, PAS 10 satellite and www.channelafrica.co.za from an African perspective.
This is Masterclass Africa and welcome to another riveting episode of the show. Very excited, new season, new energies all across the African continent. September is an African New Year. And as I promised you, on the line I'm joined by the CEO of Zinzi Mandela Foundation and the co-founder of the great empire of Kemet, who's also an Egyptologist. Mkhulu Nsingiza is joining us on the show. Thokoza Mkhulu. Yeah, it's such a great honor to be talking to you, Mkhulu. Let's just get straight into it, Mkhulu. This time of the year for the Africans, it's a very important time, Mkhulu, which according to the African calendar, September will become the first month of the year, meaning the beginning of a new year for the African continent. We know there are a few countries across the continent, Ethiopia, Eritrea, who are still stuck to the African reading or cycle of time, and this marks the new year. And many people are not aware of the African calendar, and it's not just a historical tale, but it's part of who we are as a nation. And you have been very vocal, Mkhulu. I know you've got a program that you are running throughout the country and the continent to try to take Africa back to its cycle of time.
Yes, Kesha. Most people are not aware. Why? Because they are still using the Northern Hemisphere, based calendar. That is why they are not aware. And you are right. Ethiopia and other countries, do acknowledge September as the first month, that begins, the year. On the Southern Hemisphere, there are so many countries there that are on the Southern Hemisphere, but this energy affects the whole of the continent from Egypt, to South Africa.
And Mkhulu, I don't know, because some people, when we talk about the alignment of the calendars, they just take it as, okay, yeah, it's one of the calendar that was used, but exactly, I want you to take us from here. When in September, because some people say, okay, from the 1st of September, some the 11th of September. When exactly is when does the African New Year start?
Okay, according to science, it begins on the 23rd of September. Let me tell you why. On the 21st of September, the sun officially enters what is called the imaginary line of the equator, and it takes 3 days. The 21st, the 22nd, the 23rd, it makes 1 degree southward, meaning it then begins a new cycle on the southern hemisphere. So there shouldn't be confusion, because as an example, Ethiopia goes in on the 11th. I find that that was a political decision. It has nothing to do with the correlation between what is above and what is below. It was a political decision. So the 23rd is based on the spring equinox. That there's science behind it.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, Mkhulu, because you're talking about the alignment of the science and the true point of where the calendar starts. Now, how important it is, Mkhulu, to go back to that particular time, and also to understand the significance of the new year, where it starts, and what is it that we should do as Africans to commemorate this and its significance to us?
It's very important, because it helps us who are following it, so that we align with the natural flow of energy. When you start everything in September, there's a high possibility for it to success, because it goes along with the natural flow of energy. You can't initiate this in March. Why? Because the energy of the sun is hibernating by then. And this calendar, it's not just an ornament that you put on the wall. You live it, because, this calendar has 12 seasons and 12 principles. You need to understand the prevalence, of certain energies at a particular time. So if you go according to the African calendar, most of your things, would actually succeed, because they are supported by the prevalence of the energy, at a particular time. So it's very important for us, especially as African people, to realign, to this energy. Because you'll find that that's why Africa is like this. We are going against the natural flow of energy.
We are going against the natural flow of energy. My guest today is Mkhulu Nsingiza, who's the CEO of the Zinzi Mandela Foundation, the co-founder of the Great Empire of Kemet. He is an Egyptologist himself, so you can be part of this conversation. What do you know about the African calendar? September marks the African New Year. So we are interactive on all our social media platforms, on Twitter, at Channel Africa 1, at CEMEX SA. Facebook, it is CEMEX, it is Channel Africa 1. Now, Mkhulu, this calendar, the African calendar, apparently it goes on a 13-month cycle, where each month, according to the African calendar, has got 28 days. Can you enlighten us on the cycle of this calendar, the African calendar?
No, this one, remember, there are two calendars. The first calendar that was devised by our ancestors is the calendar based on the moon. But now they found that the moon has got 13 months. They found that the moon is very erratic. You can't predict with certainty as to where it will be the next year. So they then started calculating our movement around the sun. and that gave them, 365 days, part of a 12 months of a 30-day, a month. So the solar has got 30-day months, the lunar has got 13 months, because the last month of the lunar is called Dinda, because it has about 5 days.
So is it a 30? Does it suffice to say the African calendar has 13 months cycle, or is still a 12-month cycle?
It's a 12 months, when you are calculating based on, the solar calendar. Then the moon has got 13 days. But, you can surmise it, because even the 13th day, 13th month of, the moon calendar, it has 5 days. And those 5 days, our ancestors gave, those 5 days to the first ancestors on earth. Like the energy, when they talk about this in science, they talk about the 5 solids. These are the principles that are responsible for every manifestation, on earth.
Are you still damn cool? It looks like I have lost you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Cash.
Okay, let's try to get back Mkhulu Nsingiza on the line. If you've just joined the show, we are in conversation with Mkhulu Nsingiza, who's the CEO of Zinzi Mandela Foundation, but he's also an Egyptologist. So we are talking about the African calendar. September, according to the African calendar, is the first month of the year. So we are engaging with him on the African calendar. I mean, generally, the world is on a Gregorian calendar, from a Julian calendar to a Gregorian calendar. Now, what does it mean for the African calendar? That's what we are talking about. We are also live on our Facebook page. So if you've got a question, a comment or an experience that you want to share with us based on the African calendar, please feel free to share your comments on the comments line there. I'm not sure if Mkhulu is back on the line. Can you hear me, Mkhulu?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. Didi, we're going to try to get Mkhulu Nsingiza back on the line, because we're still exploring, because some scholars, according to the African calendar, spans over a 13-month cycle, which consists of 28 days. But Mkhulu says it depends how you look at it, whether from the sun calendar, the solar calendar, or from the lunar, the moon calendar, that will be 12 months or 13 months. So it basically depends on that. But one thing notable that he said is that scientifically proven, and as the ancient African people who were following the African calendar to the letter, the 23rd of September marks the new year of African people. So, in Ethiopia, in Eritrea, they celebrate their new year on the 11th of September. So those are just, the dynamics. But one thing that African scholars and historians agree on is that September is the first month of the African calendar. Mkhulu, are you back on the line? Did we manage to get him back on the line?
Yes, I'm
all right.
on the line.
So we're encouraging you to be part of the conversation until we get him back on the line. We're going to go for a quick break, but on the other side of the break, we will be back with Mkhulu Nsingiza, and I'll be coming back with your comments straight after this.
Change your game, empowering the next generation of outstanding African entrepreneurs.
On Change Your Game this week, Shovita upcycles creativity and community in new collaboration. Shovita, taking its name from a mix of Italian and Latin, is an international cycling kit company headquartered in Cape Town, South Africa. We speak to CEO Andrew Gold about their newly launched limited edition high-performance designer gear and how it responds innovatively to societal challenges. That's here on Channel Africa with me, Asanda Beta, Friday 9 a.m. Central African Time on DSTV 802, PAS 10 satellite, and www.channelafrica.co.za from an African perspective.
This is Africa's best sport destination, Africa at Play, where there are stars, legends, and the principles of the game. Kenyan athlete Eliud Kipchoge is here, the first man in the history to complete a marathon under 2 hours. South African golden girl, Caster Semenya, Sadio Mane, one of Africa's best footballers, CAF President Dr. Patrice Motsepe, Dr. Tiangwa, COSAFA President is also present, reigning World Rugby Champs, Springboks, plus the tall height around us, That's African basketballers, Cecilia Molokwani, African netball president, volleyball, cricket, golf, tennis, boxing, and swimming, all represented.
You are listening to Africa at Play with sport from an African perspective. Live every Saturday and Sunday from 1900 hours to 2000 hours Central African Time on DSTV Audio Bouquet, Channel 802, or streamed live on channelafrica.co.za. Africa at Play.
Channel Africa on DSTV 802 and on www.channelafrica.co.za. I apologize, Mkhulu, for the technical glitch that we had at some point. I couldn't hear you, but I'm told that you could actually hear me. Can you hear me now, Mkhulu?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear, so I apologize for that technical glitch. Okay.
No problem.
What I wanted, Mkhulu, and many people now are asking questions who are following our conversation on our Facebook page, to say, when we know, Mkhulu, that this is the beginning of the year. I mean, for people who may doubt, for me, I mean, nature is supporting the idea that September is the beginning of the month, yes. Because everything in nature around us starts to happen. Life starts in September, to be honest. But what I want to ask you, Mkhulu, is, when we know as Africa, the knowledge that September is the first month of the year, it's not enough for us as Africans, because what will be more important will be the rituals. I'm sure there are rituals that are aligned to the beginning of the year, where people go to connect with the ancestors, to connect with the divine, to say, as we head into the new year, these are our wishes, these are some of the things that we... So those rituals, they help us as African people to align with the energies of the time.
Yes, definitely. In a normal, environment, you'll find that the whole country is supposed to partake in welcoming back the sun. And I fully agree with you. Nature confirms. Remember that we're from the latent period of winter. Now, when it comes to September, everything starts greening. So there are rituals that are done each and every year when we welcome the sun. This, September on the 23rd, we'll be going to Inzalo Yelang, where Babu Credo was actually initiated, where there's, the oldest stone calendar in the world, older than those, that are in Britain, and also those, that are in Egypt. So it's very important that there are certain rituals that we do to actually, welcome the sun. It's just that, we live in a completely different world. It's as if we're in Europe, yet we are in Africa.
Mm-hmm. And
yes.
And then, Mkhulu, we know agricultural activities, according to the ancient ones, also are linked to this calendar. When to plow, when is the right time to do what? There are projects. I mean, even as a nation, Mkhulu, and you've always said this. I mean, with this pandemic right now, where we would need leaders, to say, how do we cleanse generally as a nation? Probably this is the time for us to shed the old energies. We cleanse, and we asking the ancestors to lead us into this great period. So it goes deeper than even our economic activities that are aligned to our cycle of time.
It affects everything, Akesha. For us, like now, we are not yet at September. We are still in August, but at the end, we are, the community of GEK and all those, Black Africans all over the world who are following the African calendar. We are fasting. Why? Because so that we cleanse ourselves, so that the next season, when it starts, it finds that, physically, spiritually, we are also, fortified. So that when September comes, remember September, it doesn't matter, whether you are aware or not, but September affects everybody. That is why during September, after the 23rd, people will start, having new ideas, and new beginnings, are affecting everybody. So that is the energy of what we call the principle of the season. It's called Asa. Umvelingangi is also associated with hydrogen. Remember, when the sun is away from Earth, there's less hydrogen being pumped on Earth. So that is why during this period you see everything starts greening, because the hydrogen is pumped again or is getting closer to Earth again. So that is why everything starts greening. Even us, consciously we are affected. That's why I talk about people starting having new ideas during this time.
New ideas during this time is very, very important. I mean, and Mkhulu, when you look at the ancient civilizations, the most successful civilizations, the Maya civilization, the ancient Egyptian civilization, there's one thing at the core, at the center of those civilizations. It is their alignment to time, Mkhulu. Like, it's like when the car has lost the timing, So as a nation, as a continent, if we really want to become successful in how we are going to deal with the diseases, our healing systems, there's a cry that I hope somebody must hear this cry, because it has always, medicinal plants, Mkhulu, I would like to assume that they are linked to certain seasons, to our calendar. So at the core of every successful civilization is our idea of time, Mkhulu.
Yes. I fully agree with you, Kesha. And just to add, you need to add, the southern part of the continent when you talk about civilization, because the oldest pyramids, in the world are here, in South Africa, and the oldest stone calendar in the world are here in South Africa, and the mathematical bone called the Libombo bone, it was found here in South Africa, which then said South Africa is the beginning, is that part of the continent that ushered in, the civilization. So I fully agree, Kesha. This thing affects everything, agriculture, business, everything. That is why in Europe, you will find, that most of, their financial end, begins, their financial, company begin calculating from March. Why? Because in Europe, they are welcoming, the sun. It is springtime for them when it is autumn for us. So we are supposed to, our financial end has got to end in August, so that by September, we begin, a new cycle, completely altogether. But when you then calculate and see, you find that most companies and governments are controlled by the calendar that was devised for the northern hemisphere, not the southern hemisphere. So we need to unshackle those chains, for us, as Africans, so that we go back and align ourselves. Remember, when you talk about time is very important. The calculation of time was actually calculated from what is called the golden meridian. The golden meridian is the true meridian. Then, Europeans brought what is called the Greenwich meridian. That is why when you wake up in the morning, you've lost 6 hours already. It's because of the Greenwich meridian. We have moved from, the golden meridian, which, starts right there, in Durban, along the Phoenix area, and it goes up until, in Egypt. Then it continues like that. So that is the true meridian. That is the calculation of time that our ancestors used to use.
And Mkhulu, that becomes important because common sense dictates. The West, they are heading towards winter now. They are heading towards, December, what we call December, it's the peak of their winter. But for us, it's the peak of summer. So how do we use the same calendar? We cannot use the same calendar because we are totally in different spaces. So there's no way we can actually use the same calendar when we find ourselves. And also this Gregorian calendar, Mkhulu, the word oct, oct, it's October, which means 10, which means 8, but then it's 12. Des means 10, but it's the 12th month. So even the language, it's very confusing with this with this calendar. But I've got questions here, Mkhulu, for you, and it's coming from young people who are following the conversation, and I'm sure you get this a lot, who says, this is a great content. I would like to know, when will our African knowledge be transferred to books that are able to be sold in mainstream bookshops, others that a lot of Africans can have access to? The problem here is access to this kind of information. We're exposed to information that is very Eurocentric, but less of our own. I'm sure you get this a lot, Mkhulu.
Yes, we do get this a lot. Remember that we are still operating, based on the system that was, forced upon, Africans. That is why we are still following, this Western, calendar in an African, country. But what we do, like we have a book, a calendar book that was actually published already, but it's not in this about exclusive book, whatever. Why? Because it's so difficult for you to actually get in there. So that is why most people who are progressive are self-publishing. So those who are looking for this calendar book, they can send their messages to info@gekmovement.org for them to actually get access to this calendar information.
You mentioned a very iconic site in the world, Mkhulu, and you've said this before. Baba Credo Mutwa also said this, to say the most successful civilization is not in ancient Egypt as a geographic location as we know it, but it is here in Southern Africa, in South Africa to be specific. I had an opportunity last year to visit the Inzalo Yelanga, which Michael telling us and the friends they have called the Adam's Calendar. The significance of that place, where Baba Credo initiated in 1937, the significance of that place, Mkhulu, to visit it once in a while, but not just to visit it, to align with the wisdom in that ancient site.
Not only are you aligning with the wisdom and, you are aligning with the energy. Remember, the strategic position of that place. The strategic position said, this is where the male and the female energy of Earth are. So when you go there, you get balance. The male and the female energy that you have internally gets a balance and alignment. The other day I was talking even about the brain as well. Where that place harmonizes between the left brain and the right brain. So you just get total alignment. And when there's alignment, both in your brain and in your spirituality, that is when you start, experiencing what we call in Kemet, which is natural, magic. So that site is very important for Africans. Remember that before colonization of our place in Egypt, we used to go there. Our Mecca was Egypt, but now Egypt is still under occupation. Our Mecca as Africans, we should actually build a new temple, a new pyramid, a new site there at Inzalo Yelanga, so that all Africans, when it comes to this time, we all assemble at Inzalo Yelanga because we are free. It's not under occupation. Yes, our land is not back yet, but we are free to actually use that place, to unite all Africans.
Unity of all Africans. And there's another question coming through. Okay, the first question that I read was from Kitoya Bone Hekima Patudi. And then the other one says, is it true that the Basotho use and still follow the lunar calendar for their rituals?
Oh, no, definitely. Remember, Abesotho, they say the year begins in August. They are right. Why? Because that nurturing energy, August, but it gets full in September. So yes, the Sotho still use the lunar calendar. But remember that the moon doesn't generate its own energy, but it reflects the energy of the sun. So the moon and the solar, it's almost like one thing. There's no separation, between the two calendars.
That question was coming through from Tabo Kiorapez Mponya asking that particular question. We are on DSTV 802, Channel Africa, bringing you an African perspective. But we are live on our Facebook page, Max. So that's where you can be. I'm joined by the CEO of the Zinzi Mandela Foundation, who's also an Egyptologist and African scholar of note. Mkhulu Nsingiza is my guest today, and we're looking at African calendar. So do you have a question, a comment, or an experience that you want to share with us? We'll gladly like to take your questions. Mkhulu, you have raised this issue before. Have you engaged with government, at least, to raise the consciousness and the awareness to say, is there possibility of us going back to our own calendar?
They are not interested, yes. Over 20 years, we've been engaging government, and conscientizing them that it is, the government is violating our human rights by promoting this Western-based calendar, because they are making us go against the natural flow of energy. So I can confidently say that so far there's no interest in government to actually change. There is no door that we haven't knocked on. For over these 20 years, even recently, we've been trying to engage, the Department of Arts and Culture. We've sent proposals, we've sent everything. At some point, they promised that they will get involved, and they just jumped us, at the 11th hour, they never showed up. So there's no interest, there's no appetite, and there's no political will, for these people in government to actually align us to our true calendar, because this is the calendar we used to use before colonization. Remember, in September, we call it Mandulo, meaning it's the month that, begins the year. Yes. Lwesi means inkomo, the cattle have, grazed, there's enough grass, the milk is just spilling out. So yes. Every other, indigenous language, in South Africa confirms that September is the beginning of a new cycle on the Southern Hemisphere.
For young people, Mkhulu, who are, we're in the Gregorian calendar, and it's a fight, probably generations that will come after us, they will win that. In the population in the dominance of the Gregorian calendar, what is the significance of paying? Is there something we can do, separately, just to align with the energies of this new year, even though it's not a national duty, but just from the personal level or at a family level?
Yes, please, people must be encouraged to actually watch. We give lectures that are aligned to the calendar each and every Sunday. Every Sunday, we give lectures, that affects us, spiritually, economically, socially, but linked to the calendar, because we first introduce, the season that we are in, and how we are all affected, by that energy that is prevalent at this time. And people, please let them connect with us if they cannot be here physically through GEK, movement, Bonabakulu, Basekemu, on our social Facebook, and also, on Twitter, as well as, Instagram. Please, those people who are still interested in connecting back to the energy of the continent, let them listen to the lectures every Sunday. We give lectures that affect us, talk about the calendar and how we are affected, and how, we should actually move forward as a collective, of African people.
Okay, just in 10 seconds, Mkhulu, those platforms, where can they log in, maybe to follow the conversations quickly?
GEK_movement on, Facebook, as well as Instagram, as well as, Twitter. GEK_movement. If they can check us there, yes,
GEK_movement, yeah.
Movement, yes, on both, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. They can actually follow, because we give lectures about this. If people, yes.
Mkhulu Nsingiza, it's always a great pleasure talking to GEK_movement in all the platforms, GEK_movement. Mkhulu, it's always a great pleasure to sip from your cup of wisdoms. We give thanks, Thokozani.
Thokoza, siyabonga kakhulu for this exposure and the support. One day we would all meet at Inzalo Yelanga as a collective of African people, raising those vibrations. Siyabonga, thokoza ke.
Thokoza Mkhulu, we are Channel Africa, and that's why we are here to bring you an African perspective. That's why we come to the end of this episode of Masterclass Africa. You can go to our website, www.channelafrica.co.za, and get a podcast there. My technical producers in Johannesburg, Tidi Malo Makau, thank you very much, alongside Catherine Chuchu Malega. In Mahikeng, I have Lorato Lawrence, Mr. Love Kuntwani. I am Semex. Next week, don't miss the show, because I'll be talking to Zulu Matabo Zulu about the African origin of the cosmos and the principles. So don't touch that dial. I am Semex Kamako.